I never thought I'd end up standing in court watching my neighbour, the woman who terrorised my life, get sentenced for trying to destroy everything I built. This is the story of how a Karen moved next door and declared war on my farm. My name's Jake, and for as long as I can remember, my dream was simple. A little land, growing my own food and living life at my own pace. That dream came true 5 years ago when I bought this place. 10 acres of rolling hills, a small orchard, a couple of greenhouses, and a sturdy old farmhouse. It's not some big commercial operation, just me, my faithful border collie Rusty, and a handful of chickens, goats, and bees. This farm, my homestead, it's my sanctuary. It's where I find my peace, where I can work with my hands, and where the rhythm of nature dictates my day, not some office clock. One of the best things about this place? No HOA, no homeowners association. That means no fussy rules about lawn height, paint colours, or what kind of mailbox I can have. My property, my rules. That freedom was a huge part of why I chose this particular spot. It felt like true independence. Then she moved in. Her name was Brenda, but let's be honest, she was a Karen in every sense of the word. She bought the perfectly manicured modern McMansion right on the edge of my property, a place that felt utterly out of place next to my rustic farm. From the moment her shiny black SUV pulled up, she radiated an aura of disapproval that hit my old farmhouse like a cold front. The first few weeks were quiet, mostly just awkward nods across the fence line. I figured, hey, maybe she's just not the chatty type. I'm not exactly Mr. Social Butterfly myself. I just wanted to live my quiet, peaceful farm life. But then the comments started. Not direct at first. More like loud remarks aimed at her landscapers, just loud enough for me to hear. Make sure those hedges are perfectly trimmed. We don't want to see anything untidy next door. Or, I hope that odour isn't coming from our side of the property. Some people just don't understand property values. She wasn't subtle. She was talking about my goats, obviously. My goats who are arguably cleaner than most city parks. Then came the direct approaches. She'd stride over, arms crossed, a permanent frown etched onto her face. "Mr. Peterson," she'd begin, using my last name with a dismissive air, "your roosters are rather vocal at dawn. This is a residential neighbourhood, not some barnyard." "My roosters, they're supposed to crow, it's a farm." I tried to explain that I was zoned agricultural, that roosters crowing was just part of the deal. She just sniffed. Well, it's highly uncivilized. Next, it was my bees. Are those insects a nuisance? My children play in the yard, you know. What if they get stung? My bees were docile, honey-making machines, keeping to themselves. I offered her a jar of fresh honey. She just looked at it like it was poison. I don't consume farm products. Every interaction left me feeling a little more defensive, a little more irritated. My peaceful haven started to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a target. I found myself eyeing her property, wondering what her next complaint would be. I was letting her get under my skin, letting her steal a little bit of the joy from my daily routine. That was her first victory, and I hated it. One morning I went to collect eggs, and a few of my hens were strangely agitated. Their coop door, which I always secured with a latch, was slightly ajar. Nothing was missing, but it felt wrong. Later that day I noticed a patch of my newly sprouted corn seedlings looked trampled. Not by an animal, but in a deliberate stomping pattern. My eyes drifted to Karen's immaculate lawn. She was outside, watering her petunias, looking straight at my corn, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk on her lips. My gut clenched. This wasn't accidental. This was personal. This was war. That trampled corn was the moment I realized this wasn't just annoying. It was hostile. I stopped making excuses for Brenda. Her concerns and accidents were clearly deliberate acts. She saw my quiet, self-sufficient life as something messy, unconventional, and therefore something to be controlled or eliminated. And she thought, because I was just a farmer, I'd roll over. Boy, was she wrong. I called my cousin Maria. She's a lawyer, sharp as a tack, and grew up visiting my grandpa's farm, so she gets the rural mindset. I told her everything. The complaints, the implied threats, the coop, the corn. "Jake," she said, cutting right to the chase, "you're living the dream, and she's trying to turn it into a nightmare. You're not in an HOA, which is your biggest advantage. She has no authority. Zero. What you need to do now is document everything. Every single incident, dates, times, photos, video, get a good security camera system. This isn't just a nuisance, it's harassment, and if it escalates, you'll need a rock-solid case. Her words were like a splash of cold water in a good way. Documenting, taking action. It felt empowering, even if it was just gathering proof. It was my first real step toward taking back control. That day, I went online and ordered a heavy-duty outdoor security camera system. We're talking high definition, motion-activated, night vision, cloud storage, the works. I strategically placed them around the farm, covering key areas: the chicken coop, the garden gate, the property line facing Brenda's house, even my driveway. I also got a small, sturdy notebook. Every time Brenda did something, her sprinklers spraying my barn, her car blocking my deliveries by accident, the strange new dead patches on my bee-friendly wildflowers, I jotted it down. Date, time, a brief description. It felt therapeutic, a way to channel my frustration into something productive, a way to fight back without shouting. A week later, with my new cameras humming and my notebook filling up, I decided to try one last direct approach, just to say I did. Maria had warned me, you can't reason with unreasonable people, Jake, especially Karens. They operate on their own twisted logic. But I had to try. I needed to know I'd exhausted all the nice guy options. I saw her out near her mailbox. I walked over, trying to keep my voice calm and even. Brenda, I started, I need to talk to you about some things. She straightened up, her face instantly hardening. Oh, what could you possibly need to talk to me about, Mr. Peterson? Her voice was sickly sweet, dripping with fake innocence. Well, I continued, taking a breath, there have been a few incidents lately. My corn patch, for example, and my chicken coop, and my wildflowers have been tampered with. It's causing me problems, and I was hoping we could just sort this out peacefully, neighbour to neighbour. Her eyes narrowed to slits. Problems? You call that problems? Let me tell you about problems. Your animals smell, your farm is an eyesore, and your dirty delivery trucks track mud onto our pristine street. You're the problem, Mr. Peterson. You're bringing down the property value of this entire cul-de-sac with your agricultural endeavours. Her voice rose with each accusation, her face turning crimson. I tried to explain, my farm is clean, Brenda, and it's zoned for agriculture. Don't you dare argue with me, she shrieked, stomping her foot like a toddler. I moved here for peace and quiet, and you've done nothing but disrupt it. You think you can just do whatever you want out here in the sticks? Well, you've got another thing coming, country boy. Her face was twisted, veins throbbing in her neck. This was it, the real Brenda. Maria was right. There was no reasoning with her. I stood there, stunned, as she went on, a flood of crazy accusations and personal insults, until she finally spun around and stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard my old farmhouse windows rattled. I walked back, my heart pounding, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The conversation was a disaster, but strangely from that mess a clarity emerged. I saw her for what she was, a bully, full of her own insecurity, desperate for control. And I realized trying to be nice, trying to compromise, was like throwing gas on a fire. The stress started to get to me. I was constantly on edge. Every car, every distant sound made me jump. I'd check the camera feeds obsessively, feeling like I was living under constant watch, even though I was the one watching. My farm work suffered. My creative energy felt stifled by the constant worry. I'd snap at friends, cancel plans, isolating myself. But underneath that stress, something else was building. A quiet, burning anger, a steady determination. This wasn't just about my corn or my chickens anymore. This was about my right to live my life on my own land in peace. This was about my farm, my sanctuary, and her calculated attempts to ruin it, and I was not going to let her win. The documentation continued meticulously, every snapped branch, every crazy accusation, every weird incident. I was building my case, not just for the police, but for myself. I was taking my power back, one log entry at a time. The hum of dread had turned into a roar. The battle lines were drawn. After my failed attempt at talking sense into Brenda, she cranked up the dial to 11. It was like she decided, okay, no more Mr. Nice Guy or Mrs. Nice Lady. She started leaving garbage on my side of the property line. Empty coffee cups, crumpled fast food wrappers. My mail started going missing, only to magically show up a day or two later, a bit crumpled, sometimes with a faint boot print. Once I found a dead mouse on my doorstep. Gross. I shuddered thinking about what messed up joy she got from these little acts, but I documented every single one. The security cameras became my best friends, giving me undeniable proof. Then she started spreading rumours around the small rural community. I'd hear whispers from folks at the feed store or get strange looks at the hardware store. Brenda says your goats are roaming free and eating people's gardens. Brenda says you're running some kind of illegal operation out there. It was all lies, of course, but the kind of insidious lies that slowly chip away at your reputation. A few people who'd seen her antics or knew my farm was legitimate offered quiet words of support, but most just kept their distance, probably scared of Brenda's wrath themselves. She was a small-town tyrant, ruling her little sphere with fear and passive-aggressive terror. I talked to Maria again. With the stack of evidence I'd piled up, she advised sending a formal cease-and-desist letter. "This is the next legal step, Jake," she explained. "It's a formal warning. It tells her you're serious, and it puts her on notice that you're ready to take legal action." The letter arrived at her door via certified mail, a stark, legal document spelling out her harassment and demanding she stop all hostile actions. It was cold, impersonal, and definitely official. I felt a surge of relief, a sense of, finally, something real. This was me, standing up for myself, not with shouts, but with the quiet, formidable power of the law. The effect on Brenda was immediate and terrifying. She didn't just escalate, she completely snapped. The next morning, she was out on her lawn, screaming at the top of her lungs, facing my house. "You think you're so smart, don't you, Jake? With your fancy lawyer letters. You think you can scare me?" Her voice was raw, spitting venom. "I'll show you scary. You'll regret the day you ever messed with me. You'll regret it." She picked up a heavy garden rock and hurled it, shattering a decorative bird bath near my fence. Her face was contorted, veins throbbing in her neck. I watched her from my window, recording her on my phone, feeling a cold dread despite the summer heat. This wasn't just anger, this was truly unhinged. The following days were super tense. She'd stand at her window, just staring at my farmhouse for hours, an unsettling presence. I could feel her hateful gaze even when I couldn't see her. The air around my property felt thick with unspoken threats. Then came the real attacks on the farm. One morning, I found the fence around my goat pasture had been deliberately cut in several places. The goats were still inside, thankfully, but it was clear someone had tried to let them out. Another time, my water line, which runs underground near the property line, mysteriously developed a leak that flooded a section of my vegetable patch. It clearly looked like it had been pierced. And then, the ultimate low blow. Someone had dumped a bag of commercial weed killer on my organic blueberry bushes. They were starting to wilt, the leaves turning brown. My farm, my livelihood, my passion. She was trying to destroy it piece by piece. The constant stress was suffocating. I barely slept. But with each act of destruction, my resolve only hardened. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was sabotage. And I wasn't backing down. I had the cameras, I had the logs, and now I had direct evidence of criminal damage. The line between annoyance and crime had been crossed. The blueberry bushes were the last straw. Seeing my carefully nurtured plants dying, knowing it was a deliberate act, pushed me past anger into a cold, focused determination. I called Maria. She told me to gather all the evidence, especially the camera footage of the fence cuts, the waterline damage, and anything that showed movement near the blueberries. "Jake," she said, "this is no longer just harassment. This is criminal damage, possibly even attempted theft or livestock endangerment with the fence. And the weed killer? That's serious. We're calling the sheriff's department." Reporting it felt different this time. Before, it had been labelled as neighbour disputes. Now it was crimes committed on my property. The deputies took it seriously, especially with the clear camera footage. They saw Brenda, plain as day, near the fence line at suspicious hours. There was another figure near the blueberry bushes. Less clear, but the gait and build matched her. Combined with my meticulous logs and footage of previous acts, it was enough. Brenda's response to the sheriff's visit was exactly what you'd expect. She denied everything, of course, screaming about how I was a liar, how I was harassing her, and how I was jealous of her perfect suburban life. She even tried to claim I was growing illegal crops to explain the cameras. It was absurd, but it also showed how completely unhinged she'd become. The deputies warned her, told her in no uncertain terms, one more incident, one more violation, you'll be arrested. For a few days there was quiet, eerie quiet, the kind that makes you uneasy because you know it's not peace, it's a pause. I was wrong to hope it was over. It was a Saturday, mid-morning. I was out with Rusty, checking on the newly planted corn sprouts. My back was to Brenda's side of the property. Suddenly Rusty let out a frantic series of barks, not his playful bark, not the usual squirrel alert. This was different, deep, distressed, primal, the kind of bark that makes your skin crawl. I turned around and my heart nearly stopped. Brenda was in my field, my main vegetable field, and she wasn't just trespassing, she was driving. On a ride-on zero-turn mower, one of those heavy-duty landscaping beasts, and she was ploughing straight through my rows of tomatoes, peppers, squash, slicing them down like weeds in her path. The roar of the mower, normally a comforting sound in farm life, was now a scream of destruction. "Brenda!" I shouted, my throat raw with disbelief and fury. "What are you doing?" She stopped the mower, turned her head slowly. A chilling, vacant smile stretched across her face. Her eyes, they weren't angry anymore. They were calm, eerily calm, almost gleeful. "Just doing a little landscaping, Mr. Peterson," she said, her voice unnervingly soft. "Your weeds were getting a little out of control. I'm just tidying up." Rusty barked harder, pacing along the fence, sensing the chaos. I fumbled with my phone, my hands trembling, and started recording. "You are trespassing. You are destroying my property. I'm calling the police." "Go right ahead," she chirped, then cackled. A maniacal, childlike laugh. She spun the mower around and drove it straight toward a patch of my ripening heirloom melons. This was it. No more hints, no more passive aggression. This was open warfare, a full psychological break in broad daylight. I shouted again, running toward her, not to hurt her, just to make her stop. She saw me, but she didn't care. She kept going. Then, sirens. Fast, close, neighbours. Someone had called, or maybe multiple people. The noise, the chaos. The sight of Brenda, like a madwoman mowing down food crops, was enough to shake anyone. 2 sheriff's patrol cars screeched to a halt at the edge of the field. Doors burst open. "Step off the mower! Now!" one deputy shouted, hand on his holster. Brenda looked up. She looked from me to the shredded crops, to the police cars, and something cracked inside her. The twisted, righteous fury that lived just under her skin burst to the surface. "He's attacking me!" she shrieked, pointing at me with trembling fingers. "He tried to assault me. This farm is a menace. It needs to be ploughed under. I'm helping the neighbourhood. I'm cleaning it up." Then she did the unthinkable. She gunned the mower again, angling it toward the deputies. Maybe she thought she could escape. Maybe she thought she was making a final stand. Either way, it was the end. The deputies surged forward. One grabbed the mower's kill switch. The other yanked Brenda off. The machine coughed and stalled. Brenda flailed, screamed, bit one of them. It took both deputies to finally bring her to the ground. "Get your hands off me! I'm a taxpayer! I have rights! This is my neighbourhood! He's the criminal! He's poisoning us all!" Cuffed, collapsed in a pile of flailing limbs and dirt-streaked rage, she kept screaming until she couldn't any more. Her voice gave out. All that was left was a cracked, sobbing mess. The woman who had tormented me for months, who thought she could control my life, my land, and my peace, had finally reached the breaking point. And this time it wasn't my word against hers. The truth was burned into the soil, and the cameras caught it all. Brenda was charged with multiple serious offences: felony criminal damage, trespassing, reckless endangerment, and resisting arrest. The camera footage, plus the fact that the deputies witnessed her rampage firsthand, left little room for denial. The case against her was ironclad. But what really sealed it wasn't just the law, it was the people. Neighbours I hadn't spoken to in months came forward, their voices steady now that the fear was gone. They told their stories, about the slashed tyres, the shouted threats from behind her fence, the way she'd glare at kids riding their bikes past her driveway. The community that once kept its head down now stood tall. They rallied behind me, not out of pity, but because we'd all been victims of her reign. The court process wasn't easy. Sitting through it meant reliving every moment. The sick feeling of finding my ruined crops, the helpless rage when I saw her destroy my land, the endless anxiety of not knowing what she'd do next. But I faced it. I stood in court, steady and calm, not because I wasn't angry or hurt, but because I knew the truth. Her lawyer tried to twist it, paint me as a provocateur, someone who escalated a neighbour dispute. But the evidence, the mountain of evidence, told the real story. The videos, the logs, her own unhinged behaviour during trial. It wasn't just a win, it was a reckoning. Brenda was found guilty on all counts. The judge didn't hold back. She was sentenced to multiple years in prison and ordered to undergo mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. She needed help, no doubt about that. But it wasn't help I could give, not anymore. She was out of my life, and this time the door was locked for good. That Saturday, after the patrol cars left, I sat in the dirt where my melon patch had been, just staring. I didn't know what to do. But then, one by one, cars and trucks began pulling in. Neighbours, people I barely knew, people I hadn't seen in months. They brought rakes, shovels, wheelbarrows. Some brought food. Others just rolled up their sleeves and got to work. No one asked for instructions. They just helped. We salvaged what we could, cleared debris, re-tilled the soil. Someone had brought seedlings from their own garden. Another brought compost. We planted together. We worked in silence and in laughter, shoulder to shoulder. Brenda had tried to isolate me. Instead, she reminded everyone what community is really about. And that was the start of something new. The rebuilding wasn't just physical. With every repaired fence post, every new row of vegetables, I found pieces of myself again. My anxiety didn't vanish overnight, but it started to fade. The fear that used to hang over me like a thundercloud finally lifted. The farm, once a battleground, became a place of healing again. Rusty still patrols the property. He takes his job seriously. But these days his bark is more about chasing squirrels and greeting delivery trucks than sounding alarms. And me? I sit on the porch most evenings, coffee in hand, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The air smells like life again, fresh soil, wildflowers, honey from the hives. The farm didn't just survive, it thrived. Looking back, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel rebuilt. Brenda didn't destroy me. She tried. She came close. But what she did was spark something deeper. She forced me to stop avoiding confrontation and start defending what mattered. She tried to ruin my life, and in doing so, she revealed a strength I didn't know I had. I learned something through all this. Self-empowerment isn't avoiding trouble. It's facing it, with truth, with grit, and with unwavering resolve. I learned to protect my land, my peace, and my future. Being outside an HOA didn't make me vulnerable. It made me independent. And with independence comes responsibility, the kind that builds character, the kind that endures. This farm is my freedom, and no Karen, no matter how loud, how cruel, how completely off the rails, can ever take that away. Sometimes, standing your ground doesn't mean yelling the loudest. It means knowing your rights, holding the line, and letting the truth speak louder than the lies. This farm, it's not just land, it's freedom. And no Karen can take that from me. Like and subscribe for more real-life stories of resilience. Got your own crazy neighbour tale? Drop it in the comments. It's been a year since Brenda was taken away in cuffs, screaming about conspiracies and poisoned land. A full year since the war on my farm ended. I'm sitting here on the porch now, just watching the sun dip behind the tree line. Rusty's at my feet, snoring gently, twitching now and then like he's still chasing the ghosts of that chaos. But there's peace now, real peace. The kind I used to think wasn't possible with her living next door. The crops are thriving. I rebuilt every damaged row with help from people I once thought were just polite strangers. Turns out they were allies in hiding, waiting for the bully to fall so they could finally speak up, step in and lift each other up again. Funny how quiet it is now. Not just in the fields, in my mind too. No more looking over my shoulder. No more replaying her rants or worrying about what might get destroyed next. No more holding my breath every time I walk past the property line. I still have the cameras up, old habits, but I rarely check them. I don't feel like I need to anymore. I know I'm safe. Not because bad things can't happen, but because I know how to handle them now. Brenda's house went up for sale. Some young couple bought it, looking to start a homestead of their own. I met them last week. They brought over fresh eggs and homemade jam. We talked fences, goats, composting. It was normal. The kind of neighbourly moment I forgot was even possible. There are scars, sure. Some rows on the land still grow thinner than they used to. Certain plants don't come back the same after trauma. But I see them like I see myself, weathered, stronger, stubborn enough to survive. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Sometimes peace doesn't come because the storm stops. It comes when you decide to fight back, roots deep, spine straight, and refuse to be moved. I didn't want a war, but I won it. And now, this land is truly mine. Not just by deed, but by will, and I'll protect it with everything I've got.